Are you at the point of the season where you are now ready to take your Deathblow Barbarian deep into the pits? Well, I have the build for you. You've spent all season getting your gear ready. It's all min-maxed. It is time to get as far as we can before the season ends. A couple of things that we're going to change, and it is very, very small. So if you're already working from the last build that I posted, this is a very, very slight change. Again, I want to make sure we cover a couple checkpoints before we even hop into this build. If you do not have 225 Fury, as well as 7 ranks of Invigorating Fury, this build is not ready yet. In order to be able to maintain enough Fury, and in order to have enough Fury generation, those are really, really key points. When we get to the gameplay loop, I'll cover exactly why. So if you've already put the build together and you're still having some Fury issues, skip straight to the end of the video, go to the gameplay loop, it'll be in the timestamps below. It'll tell you exactly what you need to know in order to overcome some of those Fury issues. Let's hop into the skill tree. We'll take a look here. We're going to start at the top. We're going to go a couple points into Lightning Strike just to unlock our core skills. We're going through Hammer of the Ancients. Hammer of the Ancients has a dual role in this build, and it is both incredibly important. Hammer of the Ancients gains 3% more Fury for 5 seconds each time you damage an enemy. So it can be any amount of enemies. If you hit 10 enemies, you'll automatically gain your 10 stacks, which is 30% more Fury. Remember, we need to generate 200 Fury minimum. If we're generating 30% more Fury, this is exactly how we maintain our Fury. We're also going to go into Violent Hammer of the Ancients. This is going to give us guaranteed 40% increased damage every 5 seconds. We overpower every other hit, and we can guarantee Hammer of the Ancients to overpower once every 5 seconds. We're going to do 1 point into Pressure Point. We're going to come down and do 3 points into Imposing Presence. We're going to do 1 point into Rallying Cry, and then 1 point into Enhanced Rallying Cry, so we get Unstoppable. We're going to go 5 points into Warcry. We're trying to get as much damage as we can in this build because pushing the pits can get very damage intensive. 3 points into Booming Voice to extend the duration of your shouts. 2 points into Raid Leader. We want to be healing as much as we possibly can. 2 points into Aggressive Resistance. We're always going to be berserking, so we'll always have this 8% damage reduction. We're going to go 3 points into Pit Fighter. 9% increase multiplicative damage from close enemies, and then some distance damage reduction. 3 points into Slaying Strikes. When you get into the pits and you get into that high level of the pits, you're going to deal 23% increased damage to injured enemies. Injured enemies is when they're below 35% life or less. That means that when that boss gets to 35%, you have this little bit of extra damage to make that last little bit of the fight go a lot faster. We're going to do 1 point into Exposed Vulnerability. Between Exposed Vulnerability, which is dealing direct damage with a Weapon Mastery skill, is going to make your next core skill make enemies vulnerable. It's also going to be combined with your Pressure Point. So we're going to get both of these activating because our Deathblow is going to become a core skill and a Weapon Mastery skill. We're going to go 1 point into Thick Skinned, and we're going to go 3 points into Counteroffensive. This is going to give us 12% increased damage when we are over 50% of our max life as fortified. We will be fortified all the time, so this is going to be 12% increased damage all the time. We're going to be maxing out Deathblow. You want as many ranks as you possibly can into this, so you're going to put 5 points here, and we're going to go into Enhanced Deathblow. When you get to those bosses, you see huge increases of damage because of this ability here. That 150% increase multiplicative damage to bosses makes a big difference. Then we're going to go into Warrior's Deathblow. If Deathblow damages at least one enemy, you gain Berserking for 3 seconds. You Deathblow so fast, Berserking is always up 100% of the time. We're going to go 3 points into Heavy Handed. This is going to be a two-handed version of Deathblow, so we're going to get 15% increased critical strike damage. This is an overpower build. We are overpowering every other hit, sometimes 3 hits in a row. And we're going to get 24% increased multiplicative damage when you're using a two-handed weapon. We're going to do 3 points in a Wallop. Whenever you're using a bludgeoning weapon, you deal 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, which our enemies are always going to be vulnerable. We're going to do 1 point into Tempered Fury so that we can unlock Invigorating Fury. We're going to put 3 points into this. I am working on a build right here where I'm actually going to stack more than 7 points into this, and I'll explain when I get to the gear. We're going to do 1 point into Wrath of Berserker, all the way down through Supreme Wrath of Berserker, and then for our final point, we're going to do 1 point into Unbridled Rage. We are doing this on purpose to make sure that we are increasing the cost of our core skills. It has to be increased. That is the whole key to this build. We could take Unconstrained for the extra damage, because this actually does more damage than Unbridled Rage, but we absolutely need to be spending all of that Fury. We're going to take a look at the Paragon board next. Going to the starter board, we're going to be running Territorial. This will give us 10% damage reduction and some close damage. In the next board, we're going to be running Decimator. Each time that you make an enemy vulnerable, which we do all the time, every hit, we're going to get 10% increased damage. And then every time that we overpower a vulnerable enemy, which we'll be doing every 2 hits, we'll be getting an additional 10% for a total of 20% increased multiplicative damage here. Inside of that board, we're going to be running Revenge. We're going to be getting Thorns damage from our gear, and we'll explain that when we get to that later on. Dealing Thorns damage to an enemy increases the damage it takes from you by up to 8% for 10 seconds. So this is going to be a really great way to do a little bit of extra damage. In the next board, we're going to be going into the Bonebreaker board. Inside of that board, we're going to be running Might. That's going to give us 8% increased multiplicative damage with a 2-handed weapon. Moving up, we're going into the Warbringer board. This is where we're going to get all of our Fortify from, and a lot of our Fortify. We spend 200 Fury per hit, and every time that we spend 75 Fury, we're going to be getting 15% of our maximum life as Fortify, so it's going to go up very quickly. In the board, we're going to be running Wrath. We absolutely need all of the Fury generated we can. So the skills that critically hit generate 3 Fury is really, really big for this build. In the next board, we're going to be running Carnage. While berserking, your critical strikes increase your attack speed up to 16%. We are going to be berserking 100% of the time, so we should always be running 16% increased attack speed. Inside that board, we're going to be running Crusher. This is going to give us a 20% increased multiplicative overpower damage. We are going to overpower every other hit. This is going to be big damage here. In the final board, we're going to be going into the Blood Rage board. My masterworking is not complete, so if you guys make sure you follow along with the planner that's in the description, that will give you this all the way up to your 30% maximum, because I haven't finished my masterworking. I'll have what the end game build should be in the planner, so that way you guys can work towards getting all of the masterworking correct. When I go over the gear, we'll talk about where everything should be at. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Ire. That's going to give us 10% increased damage reduction, and it's also going to give us the damage while berserking that we need in order to help max out our Blood Rage node. The Blood Rage node is important because it takes 10% of our damage while berserking bonus, and it converts it into a multiplicative damage number. So we can go up to 30%, which means that we are aiming to get to 300% damage while berserking. You can get more, you can get less, but in order to get that sweet min-maxed, 300% is the way to go. Let's take a look at the gear, and let's pull this whole entire build together. The gear in this build is incredibly important. There are a lot of people that ask me, well, can I use this or can I use this for this build? The answer that I always give them is there is really no piece that you can swap out. Every little thing, including all the way down to the smallest little bit of resource generation on your ring, it is very important that we have every piece of gear in this build. If you don't have it yet, it is something to work towards. In order to get this build to run exactly like you see it, the gear is very, very specific. Starting with the helmet, we are running the Crown of Lucian. Remember, we doubled the Fury cost through our skill points. We are now taking that Fury cost that's been doubled and multiplying it by 5. Your Deathblow will go up to a cost of 200. We need that. It is incredibly important. It is the most important part about this. Your masterworking crits are going to go into your cooldown reduction or your chest piece here. There's a couple different options. I've been testing out Wild Bolt because I love the way that it pulls. It starts the group before me aggro. So that means as I'm going backwards and I'm pulling monsters with me, ones will aggro to me and start to run towards me so that I can get to them faster. And then as I'm standing still, taking advantage of intercom, I'm going to also be pulling monsters in that are running away from me. It's less times that I have to use Steel Grasp, more times that I can use Deathblow. Another great option here, it would be to run Exploiters. But if you're going to run Exploiters, you're going to have to change a lot of things around because you need to make things unstoppable, which means you would need to run Concussion. So it is a whole different setup. So right now, we're going to keep to this. We're going to run Wild Bolt on the chest piece. This is going to pull enemies towards you as you go. The affixes, we're going to run Strength, Max Life, and here is a small change. This one can also change as well. I'm going to put Healing in the planner but I'm going to talk about the Fury per second on here. If you look at my Fury right now, I am max 100%. Part of the whole thing about Deathblow is getting your build started, right? How do you generate Fury when you're starting? This is a really, really, really great quality of life having that Fury per second. But if you lose the 20% healing on your chest piece, you have to make up for it. It actually is noticeable. That small little 20% you notice. So in order to counter that, for the tempers, we're running Invigorating Fury, and then we're running Outburst. Outburst is going to be the start of your Thorns, and then your bleed damage. The Invigorating Fury, I'm actually going to put 3 Master Working Points into this so that I can get that additional healing that I'm losing from having that 20% increased healing on my chest piece. For the gloves, we're going to be running Intercom. The whole point of this build is we're going to run. We have a ton of life. We feel very tanky, so we pull a big gigantic group to us, and then you stand still. That's going to give you a 30% increased multiplicative damage. For the affixes, we're going to be running max life, attack speed, and core skills. I would love a greater affix for core skills here, but it is a tough piece of gear to find. So all of your masterworking crits will go into your core skills. For the tempers, we're going to be running tough as nails. That's the second half. That's going to give you your bleeding damage from your thorns from Outburst. And then we're going to be running damage while berserking here to give us up to that 30% increased damage. For the pants, we're going to be running to Bolt's Will. This serves several purposes. Increased damage, which I am at the very minimum of. It would be great if I had more, but we need the maximum resources. Having a greater affix here on maximum resources is incredibly important so that you can get to your goal. If you have greater affixes on a lot of the pieces of gear that give you maximum resources, you don't need to put any masterworking crits into it. If you are under 225, put masterworking crits into your maximum resources somewhere. This is also going to give us more fury every time we become unstoppable. Between Yen's Blessing, Rallying Cry, and Wrath of the Berserker, we're going to be getting unstoppable pretty often. So this will be a nice little boost to our maximum fury as well. We're going to be running Yen's Blessing for the boots. You have a couple different options for your masterworking crits here. Movement speed is always great, but if you get more all stats gives you armor. So I'm a little under armor cap, so this would help if I went into all stats. This would also give me more willpower. Willpower gives you healing. The more healing you do, the more fury you generate, and we'll get to that when we get there later on. For the bludgeoning weapon, we're going to be running Overkill. This is pretty simple. You just put all your ranks straight into Deathblow. For the dual wield weapon, we're going to be running the third blade. This right here brings the whole build together. If you don't have a third blade, you cannot run this. And the reason is your weapon mastery skills are now also core skills. They are a core and a weapon mastery skill. So if you look at Deathblow here at the very top, weapon mastery in green, core is grayed out. So that means that Deathblow is now both. It also removes the cooldown. So normally Deathblow has a cooldown and charges, removes that, but it adds a fury cost. It also makes it deal an additional 66% damage. This is a great weapon. It is incredibly important to this build, so you have to have it. Masterworking crit should be 100% into strength. For the other dual wield weapon, we're going to be running the Doombringer. Everything straight into max life. The reason that we are putting all of your points into maximum life here, it is not just for survivability. If you come down and you read what your overpower damage does, further increased at the moment of impact based on your maximum life and your fortify. So the more life and the more fortify we have, the more damage overpower does. This is incredibly important to just go straight into your maximum life. For the slashing weapon, we're going to be running the Grandfather. This is going to give us a lot more damage from your critical strike damage. We are critting 100% of the time, so that we always take advantage of the extra critical strike damage that the Grandfather is giving us. Your masterworking crits are actually going to go straight into maximum life again to do more damage. Your first ring is going to be Starlight. This is where we get all of our fury from. If we don't run Starlight, we do not have the build. Starlight, you gain 40 of your primary resources for every 20% of your life that you heal. That is super key, and that is the reason why, if you look at the skill tree, we took and we need at least 7 ranks into Invigorating Fury. 7 ranks puts us over 20%. That means that every time that we spend 100 fury, which we do 200 fury per hit, we're going to be healing 40% of our life. If I put my other point into this, now I'm going to be doing 24%. I'm looking to get to 27% with my final masterworking crits into this. This is going to be super, super key to this build. Hopping back into the gear, as we talked about before, willpower also gives you healing. So we're getting almost 100% increase healing as well. So we heal from Invigorating Fury. We're going to be healing from your willpower. That is going to be the source of our Fury generation. We need to generate at least 200 Fury per swing. For the affixes, we're going to be running max life, attack speed, critical strike damage, and then we're going to be running damage while berserking, which should be a triple masterworking crit. That is where I'm missing out on that little bit. And then we're going to run resource generation. That resource generation is an incredibly important part of this. It seems very small and maybe insignificant, but it makes all of the difference, trust me. For the next ring, we're going to be running the Ring of Red Fury. This is going to have maximum resources, which we already talked about. It also is going to guarantee us to critical strike, no matter what. After spending 100 Fury within the next 3 seconds, your Deathblow or Hammer of the Ancients will guaranteed critical strike, and it's going to deal an additional 40% increased damage. We spend 200 Fury per swing, and even Hammer of the Ancients will spend 170. So we're always hitting that 100 threshold. That means that we are always going to be critically striking. It is really, really cool. Masterworking crits here should go straight into attack speed. And then finally for your necklace, we're going to be running the Banished Lord's Talisman. You want to go straight into your core skills for your masterworking crits. What is so important about the Banished Lord's Talisman, and the whole reason that we want to be spending as much Fury as possible, because after you spend 275 Fury, your next core skill is guaranteed to overpower. Now, we took Deathblow, and we made Deathblow into a core skill. Hammer of the Ancients is a core skill. We are guaranteeing overpower after we spend 275 Fury, which is every other swing. The way that it works out, it actually is every other swing, and then you go on a little tiny spree of 3 overpowers in a row. You're going to hit incredibly hard. The most important stats on this is going to be your affix, because you want to be doing as much overpower damage per hit as you can, and then your core skills here. That's the gear. Let's go over the gameplay loop. I'm going to cover a couple ways to kind of help you with Fury generation and Fury mitigation, because Fury is an issue with this build. That is the biggest question that I get asked, and that people have issues with, is maintaining Fury. So we're going to talk about all of the ways to do that, and a couple little, I guess, like workarounds if you haven't quite got there yet. First thing that you always need to do is you need to start with Hammer of the Ancients, and here's why. A lot of people have thought this was a bug because they start using their Deathblow and you're going along and then all of a sudden you stop. I have almost max Fury, but why did I stop? Remember, we need to generate 200 Fury per swing. I only generated about 180 there. How you fix that? Hammer of the Ancients, it stacks up to 10 times, and that will give me 30% more Fury. So as we stack Hammer of the Ancients, if you look right above Hammer of the Ancients, that green bar right there is your 30% increased Fury. So as long as we hit inside of that green bar, we will always have enough Fury generation to generate Deathblow. So we're going to start attacking now, and normally at about this point, I would run out of Fury. But because I have Hammer of the Ancients up and I'm using enough stacks, I will always be attacking if you're having issues with Fury. A couple things that you can do. Elixir of Resourcefulness is going to be your number 1. This will drop your Deathblow cost all the way down to 64. When you max out Deathblow, you're going to actually go all the way up to only 160. So if we just are running 160, we can constantly generate enough Fury to not even use Hammer of the Ancients. We do lose some of the overpower damage because we're not spending as much Fury. So we lose a little bit of damage running the Elixir of Resourcefulness, but if you can't attack, then you do no damage. So this is a really, really great way to give yourself a little bit of extra damage when you're going and make this a much more manageable build. We generate enough Fury that we actually don't even need to hit anything when you run this Elixir. That's one workaround. If you're just barely there and you look at your Fury and you're like, oh my god, I generated 195. A really great way to do that is to come to the Occultist and you put your chess piece in, and we're going to put Weapon Master on. So what Weapon Master does, it's a utility, and this is going to give your Weapon Mastery skills an additional charge. If you read the third blade, their Fury costs are reduced by 5 for any additional charges the skill would have had. So if we put on Weapon Master, that now Deathblow is going to cost 70 instead of 80. So this actually reduces it just a little bit less. So this will give you a little bit more Fury spent. So it is also a really good workaround. If you want to keep Wild Bolts and you want to put on your elixir of resourcefulness, that is also a good option for you. For your skill assignments, you will have Deathblow assigned to your overkill, so you want to be using a bludgeoning weapon. For your expertise, we're actually going to be running your two-handed axe. The way that expertise works, you do not have to be running the weapon that you're using for your expertise. We're going to be running two-handed axe, but we're going to have our weapon set to bludgeoning weapon. That means that even though we're using a bludgeoning weapon, we're getting that additional 10% increased multiplicative damage to vulnerable enemies. For the gems, we're going to be running life, because remember, life is more damage, which is an awesome part of this build, because now we can run a huge amount of life. We're going to be running rubies in the weapons. That's going to give us additional overpowered damage. And then in the jewelry, we're going to be running our skulls, because we are just under armor cap. I cleared 135 in the pit, and I didn't notice the armor cap whatsoever. That's the build. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm super excited for you guys to get in there. Post your highest clears with this build. Watch the pit clear that's in the description of the video. The video is kind of long to add a 15-minute clear to it. When you watch that video, look at how I'm pulling. I'm not good at it yet. I still have to get back into the habit of it, because it's the first time that I've ran pits all season. You're going to pull monsters with you. You're going to chain them. You have to get that timing down, so it takes a little while. Get to those bosses as soon as you can. Give yourself enough time to kill it. I'm live on YouTube and Twitch every night. Stop by, theory crap with me. Let me know what you think of the build. Catch you on the clip side.